So the key to all this is that sometimes we put together our scopes of work and we don't exactly know what to include. Like we have an idea, but we're not exactly sure, if this is the best answer to give. And the answer to that is this, is issue a request for needs to the vendor community with the right intentions. So you might also know this as an RFI, but there's very specific things we do here that make your scope of work development all the more effective. An RFN is not surveying for general capabilities. So if you're trying to go out the industry and see what people can do just to collect some information, I would not do that. Fishing for data is seen as out there. That is not what a request for needs is at. Request for needs is, here's what we have as the owner, industry, does this look about right? What things would you need to help us be successful once we do issue the RFP, request for proposals? So some questions that the RFN can answer is, what information do the vendors need to put together a good response to your RFP and have minimal contingency? The reason why I have contingencies in our bids is because we don't know what's going to happen. So anything we can do to minimize that contingency is a really good thing. How should the scope be structured and why? How can the owner begin working on now different parts of the site and the other specific conditions? And just like the scope of work template, we have an RFN template. So it walks us through this document to actually update. You see all the blue highlights are where you'd update with your information. Again, be glad to send this to you. It's just a Word document. You can issue this out to the industry. So the way you do this is the first step is you update and you create your scope of work. That's the first thing. Then what you do is you take your RFN template and you issue that to the industry if on projects where you're not exactly sure what's going to happen here. So you take that RFN, you issue it to the industry, and they will respond back to you as to what is done. Now you can do this in parallel with your actual RFP document, so there's no lost time here as to how we're going to forward with that. So they'll respond to you. The industry will say, here's what we need to know. They may ask about volumes, occupancy, current practices, scopes of work, other things they might be doing. Answer as much as you can about the questions that the vendors ask you in response to that. You may not be able to answer everything, and that's fine, but answer as much as you can. I had a project recently where there was a scope of work. There was a bunch of questions that were asked, things like, you mentioned doing these practices. Can you tell us more about what those are? Or can you provide us an example of what the previous vendors have done for that? The owner's response to that was, we don't think you need to know that, and therefore we're not going to tell you. It was literally verbatim that. I mean, that's crazy, right? The reason why the industry is asking is to help minimize their contingency. The reason why they're asking is so they can actually put together a better proposal. So if you're being asked questions, you should, again, answer that as best you can, right? So Seattle City Light, this is in Seattle, obviously, right? And here's what they did. So on Friday, this is what they actually did. They issued their RFN. They created the RFN document, which is their scope and the template. On Monday, they advertised the RFN, so over the weekend, so 2 days later. The following Monday, so a week later, the vendors submitted their RFN response, so we're now at about a week here. On Tuesday, the team came up with action items that they wanted to do based on what the vendors said in response to their RFN. Some of the vendors, and this is amazing here, some of the vendors actually came in and proposed rewritten scope that was better describing what they actually needed here. That's amazing, right? On Thursday, Seattle's project team provided answers and documents, and then Friday they released the final RFP, and they went forward and moved on the project. So again, when you think about issuing scopes of work here, don't just issue it and hope for the best, right? Don't do that. We don't want to do that because at the end of the day, that may not be very effective. So if you're not sure what to do here, issue an RFN. If you're not sure that your scope of work is accurate, or if you're concerned that there might be information missing, issue this request for needs to the industry. Make it simple, have page limits. All of this is spelled out in the document I mentioned, and just issue it because it can really add a lot of value and really make this whole process a lot easier.